Hello and welcome to Ready for Nintendo, episode 728. It is June 24th, 2021, and this is our first post-E3 episode. I mean, E3 was ending as we recorded the last one, but last week we did our E3 live show with an audience listening in, and thank you for those of you who were able to come out and join us for that. It was fun. If you want to hear us talk about all of the Nintendo announcements at E3, that is back on episode 727 in With the Old, which is a reference to the fact there were all kinds of weird old franchises that showed up in that one. It is also helpfully labeled as E3 2021. So you can go back and check that if you want to get that stuff. Likewise, patreon.com/NWR. We've dropped another Patreon episode. This is the standard what you've been watching. So you can go check that out for $1 a month. That was our 25th Patreon episode monthly. So we've been doing this for over 2 years now. So you can go enjoy those right now. For $1, you get, let's say, roughly 35 hours of RFN content in case you need more of us in your life. So,
probably 60 or 70 Netflix recommendations.
Yeah, at this point. I mean, we're getting up there. There's about 13 per episode, so... and I've added 2 more since we recorded. We actually recorded a while ago. It didn't drop until... I wanted to get it past E3 before I dropped it. I've picked up 2 or 3 more since then, so... It's the hits keep coming. You heard the voice of Guillaume Veillette.
Hello, hello.
We have not heard the voice of Mr. Greg Leahy.
Oi, everyone.
Or Mr. John Lindemann.
It's great to be here, James.
It's great to have you, John. So we're going to do this kind of the standard RFN format, but we're going to try to make sure we save a lot of time for email because it's been a while since we've done a dedicated email segment. But I'm going to kick us off with new business because I've got a boatload of stuff, but a lot of it I can get through fairly quickly. I streamed the entirety of Consider It 3. This is the sequel to Consider It 2, which is the sequel to Consider It, which is a weird WarioWare-esque style minigame collection based around Japanese politeness. But I Consider It 3, and I've talked about these games, so I don't need to spend a bunch of time on it. It's the same kind of concept, though. Like, you get a vague direction, and you solve it quickly. You've got a very limited amount of time. But there's multiple solutions, some of which are considered highly considerate, some of which are considered highly inconsiderate, and then there may be options in the middle. One of my favorite ones from this particular game, there's 100 per game. One of my favorite is basically, I don't remember what the direction is. It's relatively vague, but there's a newswoman doing a story on the street, and your character is walking behind them. And your choice, I think what the game wants you to do is stop before you enter the camera view and kind of like wait or turn around. You can just choose to walk through her shot, which, it's not a big, she's doing a shot on a public street. That's her problem. Or you can do what I did when I was playing around, which is walk directly in front of her, walk towards the camera and wedge your face into the screen where it's just your face squared up on the screen. That's the kind of nonsense this game lets you do. And then every 5 minigames, the game evaluates you over that last set based on this kind of vague terminology to describe if you were being considerate or not. So it'll say
they don't go as far as there's been real cases of people just sexually harassing women reporters.
No, the game,
okay.
The game's not that specific. It's more like you can just kind of walk around. The go-to is usually like etiquette on a subway. That pops up a lot. You'll be like on a train, and it'll be like an old woman will walk up, and the game wants you to get out of your chair and give her the seat. And then the other things you can do if you experiment with the space they give you varies from game to game. This time there was one option, which is you're not in the seat. A guy gets up as the old woman is approaching. You could just sit in the chair and be an asshole and not let the woman with the walker sit down. Or you could just stand there and let her sit down. So the winning cases do nothing. And define winning, because the game basically says there's no consequences for right or wrong. It's do whatever you feel like doing. It is absolving you of that. So there is a third choice, which I discovered, which is you can just sit on the lap of one of the other people on the train, which is the one I went with. There's a lot of, if you're a nihilist like me, there's an urge to just fuck around in the space and find the hidden things they want you to do. I got through this game in about 40-ish minutes, and that was probably enough, but I also only paid $3 for it while it was on sale. And I don't regret it at all. I like these games. If you haven't played them and you like the WarioWare stuff, you should go try the Consider It games. Consider It 3 is Consider It 2 has some references to the first game. Consider It 3 is literally like a sequel to those two games. Like there's a weird overarching story it's laying out that relies on characters that it had in the other two games and like creating a narrative around. It's weird. But I liked it. It was fun. Donut County. Guillaume's talked about this. I played it. It's Katamari with holes instead of a ball, basically. You get a hole, you control it, and you pick things up, and as you add things to the hole gets bigger, so you can pick up progressively larger things. And it's basically a simple puzzle game to try to clear out all the spaces it gives you.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like the comparing it to Katamari Damacy kind of only really works in terms of you go get objects to make your thing that you control bigger, but it's not like Katamari Damacy is not quite a puzzle game. Like
no, it's much more of a kinetic game in that case. It's just it explains the concept. Add things, get bigger.
Yes.
Then you can get bigger things. But 90%, I would say, of that game's appeal is from its writing.
Oh yeah,
which
is funny.
Yeah,
like the objects that you collect. Yeah, the objects that you collect afterwards, like you can go see their description as seen by the raccoon that is controlling the hole.
The Trashopedia.
Right, yeah. So I forget like the specific examples because it's been a while, but
there was one where it was like he was describing fish, and he just starts talking about there's an overarching theme of birds are untrustworthy. So anytime you catch a bird, there's some kind of commentary on how untrustworthy the bird is. Or you get a birdhouse, and it says something like a home for monsters is his description of it. Trash, like their whole appeal is they like trash because they're raccoons, and these raccoons have taken over the town effectively. And it says like trash can, the classics. Dumpster, high probability of good food inside.
Right.
Oh, there was one that about killed me because I just lost it and I can't remember what it was now. But like there's a number of those that are really good.
There's hundreds of those jokes.
Yes.
So
our protagonist kind of sucks. I mean, even the one who's supposed to be the voice of morality, she also kind of sucks because she's like, yeah, that horrible shit you did was pretty funny, but you got to stop doing it. It's like, I mean, like not really. It's just pretty awful. But yeah, I mean, it's a fun game. It is very short, as Guillaume has alluded to. But again, I got it during the post E3 sale, and I got it for like $5, and it was totally worth that. It's a fun thing. I beat it in, I don't know, 2 settings. Pretty straightforward. I enjoyed it a lot. I streamed a bit of it and then stopped because I realized like so much of the game's writing was its appeal, and I didn't want to ruin it. So I strongly recommend it. Maybe not for full price. I played the demo of Game Builder Garage, and we've talked about I'm a software developer. I know how to write software. This is what I do. I haven't made games in a long time. I did a little bit of that when I was younger. It sucks. It is the most frustrating style of programming. Well, that or CSS. CSS sucks. But the demo of Game Builder Garage is just the first set of tutorials. So the opening tutorial, then the first like roadblock challenge they put in your way of like, have you learned the lesson? And then the first real tutorial, which is this game where you control the two characters, and if one touches the other, they explode. It's tag, basically. It takes so long to do these tutorials. It takes so long. It's so slow. They talk to you like you are just an absolute moron. And they'll repeat things over and over and over. It's like, okay, well, remember, if you want to gain access to the parts, put down a person, and then you can go into the drawer for items, and then there's person there. Let's show you how to do that. So like, it'll make you click the drawer, then it'll make you click the person, then it'll make you drag it onto the screen, and then you're going to get more of the tutorial character, which is like this dot. It's like almost like Navi, and he's very excitable. And they'll start talking to the representation, because all of the like components that you program against or program with are sentient, so then they'll start talking to each other and they'll like make jokes, and like the button guy will start talking about, oh, press me and things are gonna happen, and then he'll say some weird thing about being pressed that makes me kind of uncomfortable. The one that represents the left stick will boing at you, and then your tutorial guide will go like, I'm really excited to play this game, let's go to the next tutorial now, boing, and then you get to, it's, oh god, it takes forever, it takes so long. Like, just let me try it. Let me try my hand at it and see if I fail, and then ask for help. So I don't know if I'm going to pick this game up because that tutorial was frustrating. And slow.
Now, do you think it would be frustrating for somebody who wasn't a software developer, though?
Yeah, I think it was way over the top.
Yeah.
Maybe less frustrating. Like, I had this issue with like Human Resource Machine for the first 15 levels, where I'm like, just let me skip these.
Yeah.
Let me test out of this shit. I don't need you to explain what a variable is. Goddamn. But this was just like, oh my god. Like the stupid. So in the first first two tutorials and one challenge, I think I got boinged at by the left stick like 9 times. I'm like, just stop it. Just shut the fuck up. Twice the tutorial stops to tell you how to make the character jump, which is click on the button. So basically, it's, if you've seen drag and drop programming tools, it's like that. Entities, you bring them into the environment, and they either have input or output ports, or they might have both. They might have input and output ports. And you connect the input port of one entity to the output port of the other. And so then when an event is fired, oh god, I'm using programming terms. When an event is fired off the output port of the actor, it triggers whatever the outcome you would expect to trigger on the input port of the other one. So to simplify it, there's a box that represents the B button, and he's sentient, and he talks to you about being pressed like it's his thing. And then there is the character representing, it's like the stick figure thing. And they're both dragged into the programming space. And then there's little, they're ports. There's a little like bump on the edge of the box that represents these things with a dot in them. And you can draw lines from an input port to an output port. And so an object either has inputs or outputs. I think some of them have both. I haven't seen both, but it would make sense if they do. And that basically triggers something. So if I press the B button, nothing happens unless I drag a line between the output port from the button to the jump input port on the person, and that triggers jump. Now jump works. Everything's great. So, that's it. It made me go through that thing where it shows me click by click twice. It's like, just let me do it. I know how to do it now. I've done it once. Please stop. So, I don't know. I'd like to play with this tool. I don't know that I'm going to be able to get anything done because it feels like it's going to take forever.
Yeah, from other podcasts I've listened to, or like people on Twitter, the tutorial does take forever, but eventually it ends, and then the game becomes good, you know? So, I guess like it's a necessary evil.
Yeah, it does sound like you don't have to do all the tutorials to unlock all the content, though. Like, you do the first couple, and then the game's like, okay, you can do whatever you want, but you got to figure it out on your own if you don't use the tutorial. What I wish I could do is jump to tutorials that have things I'm interested in. Like, there's one that talks about making something in 3D. I'd like to see how that works.
So they force you to go through every single tutorial.
Yeah, it's a progression.
Yeah.
I mean, you could just not do them. I think you have to do the first one in order to access the build. Okay. But then you can just go build. I mean, I could figure it out, I'm sure, but whatever. Famicom Detective Club: The Girl Who Stands Behind. This is the second Famicom Detective Club game, or the first, depending on what chronology you choose to play them in. It's your call. I can say definitively, having now played both of them, that's true. I would recommend playing The Missing Heir first, though. And the reason I say that is The Missing Heir is a little bit worse in terms of flow. So they made The Girl Who Stands Behind back on the Famicom originally, about a year later. Like, it came out about a year later, and you can tell that the team learned a lot from the experience. There's a lot less like really random, like, okay, I have to think 3 times in order to progress the story happening. I ended up having to go to a guide for The Missing Heir for the back 2 or so chapters, maybe 3. Not the whole time, like, but I had to occasionally just go in and go like, hey, what the fuck do you want me to do? I never had that experience with The Girl Who Stands Behind. Doesn't mean there weren't times where I just basically rubbed my face on every surface to advance the plot. But broadly speaking, I was able to get through it cleanly and not feel lost. So they just did a better job telegraphing when you should change topics and stuff. And the game would give you hints more readily. So if you do a think, it'd be like, I bet if I could find somewhere quiet to talk to, insert character here, she might be more willing to talk. So that's the game's way of telling you, you should probably go find somewhere quiet. There's only 4 places. You should probably go to that place. The only thing you have to think about then is, I have to go to that place and then trigger a think. So my character can go, this is a quiet place. Or a look, which the character will look around and say, this place seems quiet. Both will work, which helps a little bit too. I liked this game quite a bit. I liked both of these games quite a bit. The year of Sakamoto. This is his big year. These are interesting games. Like, they do some fun stuff. They do some interesting storytelling. Like, I think the first game has a couple twists that are supposed to be like, oh my god, I didn't see that coming, but you fucking see it coming. They're a little too trite. They're a little too easy to guess. But it's still fun. I actually like this one more because although I was able to figure out who the killer was before our characters did, we're not dealing with an Ace Attorney situation where it's like, everyone's brain dead. I see. Hey, there's a guy here whose name is The Killer. I wonder if this person is responsible for the killing. It respects you a little bit more than that. Although in the Killer case, he actually isn't the killer. So he is and he isn't. So whatever. The Girl Who Stands Behind in particular, there's this current of conversation where it's like, this one's more like a horror story. I don't think it is. Not really. There is talk of ghosts, and there are high school kids talking about how their school is haunted, but I never really got the impression that the characters that you're controlling, your nameless hero, believes that the school is haunted. Like, I never got the impression that he thinks there's ghosts or that the investigators think there's ghosts. Just that a bunch of Japanese high school kids think their school is haunted, which sounds like is a relatively normal, like, rumor spread about the school. There's a ghost in this school. Didn't you know? There is a murder in the school though. Like, that part's quite well covered. I reiterate my commentary from The Missing Heir of like, the police just let the high school kid just like poke dead bodies. Like, oh yeah, I mean, you're obviously a detective, high school child. You should definitely be allowed to investigate this corpse. But it's even more ridiculous in this one because it takes place 2 full years before the Missing Heir. So he's like 14, maybe even younger. And they're like, yes, this is the one who will solve this murder. Still, I like it. You get to meet Ayumi, who is the other detective's assistant in the second game. This is how they met. No, I don't want to spoil that. There's a weird thing at the end of the game where it evaluates how good you were as a detective, and I'm not sure what like metrics it's using for that. But basically the game stops and's like, all right, you were very inquisitive. You behaved well. You were proper to people. And like, I guess it's based on like choices you make when you like, how do you want to ask a question? But like, fuck if I can figure out what it is. There's beyond that, there's another set of like morality tests that happens afterwards that I don't want to get into, but it cracked me the fuck up while it was happening. So I couldn't believe it was happening. And then I immediately had to go to YouTube and find best case scenario, worst case scenario versions to see what it's like. It's pretty great. I blazed through this game. Again, it's about a 2-sitting game. I would say very small number of hours. Which of course affects my ability to recommend it. It's pretty short. But I think its brevity here actually is a net positive for it. Because I feel like if these writers had more rope, they would have just hung themselves with it. The writers being Sakamoto. But it's good. I enjoyed it. Recommend it if you like visual novels. These are both very good. A lot of money was spent making them. They look very nice. They are, they have very good music, but if you like the old music, you can listen to that. And if you like the older music, you can use that instead. That's right. It has the Famicom and the Super Famicom music versions also included, plus full new remixes. It's all very good. And yeah, there's some really good music here. I like the characters largely, which is a hard thing to do sometimes in these mystery games. You can see, if you like the Ace Attorney games, you can see the influence of them here. But the Ace Attorney games obviously are more kinetic in how you interact with them. Like there's a lot more hunting around for objects and stuff like that, whereas this is very much less of that than there normally is. So, yeah, I liked it. Again, strong recommend. So, it's cool. And then lastly, I have no idea how to pronounce this game. Got nothing. I don't speak Italian. Mutazione is the best I could think of. Mutazione.
It's funny because like that came out on Switch recently, right? This review code that you got. But yeah. I think that they gave away the game on Epic Game Store like last year. So I thought this was old, you know.
It's a mix of old and not old. I think it was pretty new on PC when they gave it away on Epic Game Store.
Right.
But yeah, this game came out about a month ago on Switch. It was kind of in the list of games that needed a reviewer. I think some people were just kind of waiting around before they pulled their next review to see what's going on with E3. And there's a whole bunch of games coming out in July. So people might not have been super eager to grab reviews because it's work, you know. And the game itself doesn't necessarily like lend itself to making you necessarily jump off the page and go, I want to get that one. They describe themselves as a mutant soap opera. I'm about halfway through this game. It's really short. I think it's like 6 hours or somewhere in that neighborhood. It is basically you can't lose. It's not even necessarily a game per se. It falls into that category of like interactive fiction. Because there are about 5 things. Well, the game basically progresses through the day. You play a she's high school aged. Yes, she is. A high school aged girl who is sent to an island to meet the grandfather she's never met, by her mother. She goes on this like broken down old boat across the Pacific Ocean to this island. But the thing about this island is her mother grew up on it and then left for reasons that are, at least to this point, not stated, but alluded to. This island was struck by a meteorite a number of years ago. They refer to it as the Moon Dragon. And as a consequence, the residents of the island were like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles style mutated. So they're all kinds of like weird, like there's rock people. There are these like they're literally just circles with legs and arms and a face. They're called the Dots. They just speak in like weird noises. There are these like sausage looking dudes, who run around and have like economics schemes where they're talking about gaps in the marketplace. There's a dude that's just goo, and he talks about synthesizing his nutrients. I mean, because he's literally just goo. So you and then your grandfather basically he was a scientist who went to the island who became a healer there, because he's studying all the unique mutated fauna. The only other normal human on the island is a guy who showed up 20 years ago to run a bar. So you're basically just encountering all these weird mutant people, but they're all nice. Like they aren't monsters, they are monsters, but they aren't like monsters to you. They're actually really nice to our hero. They try to be hospitable and they're just excited to see her here because they all remember her mother. And of course her grandfather is their shaman healer. So, there's a affinity there. So basically you get an objective, the day split up into like 5 sections. You get an objective for that section. And it's basically like, I need you to go plant this crop in the the grass. And that's it. You go do that thing, and then there's an indicator that says when you do this, the time will advance. But you can explore the island before you go do that thing and get more narrative about what's going on, and like encounter a couple who's about to have a baby, but their vision for the future is pretty diametrically opposed, or a mother who's worried about her lonely son, a son who's in love with someone who's already taken. It is kind of like soap opera-y stuff. That's why the game calls itself that. There's lots of characters who have their own shit going on, and you can go talk to them and get some background on it, or not. I mean, or you could just rush through the game and get to the end. I feel like what the game really wants you to do is spend time exploring and meeting people and getting to know their personalities. There's a little bit of oh crap, what was that game called? Came out on Switch a couple years ago. I played it on PS4. With like the cat girl was the primary character.
Night in the Woods?
Night in the Woods, yeah. There's a little bit of Night in the Woods there. We're like, you know what you need to do in Night in the Woods, and if you do it, time will advance. But you can go muck around and talk to people and get more backstory on stuff instead. There's not as much like hidden things to do per se, because again, there's not a ton of that. It's mostly just talking. You can collect seeds for the garden, I guess, but yeah, I mean, it's not quite as funny as Night in the Woods, but it's also a bit more earnest. It's trying to be a bit more sincere, even though the setting is not quite, super serious. There is some good comedy in here too, so I like it. If you liked Night in the Woods, it's got less of an edge, but there's definitely some similarity there. So, I'm having fun with it. I'm not done. I'm excited. I'm about halfway, and then I'll have a review up hopefully soon after this episode comes out, but we'll see. But yeah, that's it for me, which I know that's a lot. That's much more than I usually do. So, I'm going to move on to John.
Yeah, so one game I have been dipping back into, one of my favorites that came up on the Super Nintendo online service is Super Baseball Simulator 1000.
Oh, yeah.
Which I absolutely adore this game. Used to play the heck out of it back in the day when it first came out. So it's very, to me, this is the super, I mean, this is the Tecmo Bowl of baseball to me. Where it's very simple, but at the same time, extremely engaging just because the batting is so, dumbed down comes to mind, but it's just like, it's so simple. It's so it's so binary to me.
It's timing oriented.
Yes.
Did you hit the timing?
Yes. It's,
unless you're dealing in the Super League and then weird shit happens.
Yeah, then it's just crazy stuff. But, yeah, like this is, and I think that's really why I played this game so much. Also, what I used to do is it lets you edit the lineup. So it comes with all fake teams, that's just city names, Pittsburgh, Houston, etc. But then you can edit the lineup yourself. So you can go in there. So, you can go in there and take your favorite team, and then you can make, approximations of all of the characters on that team, and then go from there. And you can play a full season. I mean, a full season, like the whole thing, nine innings. Yeah. You can just sit there and play this game for so long. But of course, much like Tecmo Bowl, you just wind up getting completely just ridiculous statistics because you'll always have one character who is just a complete freak, and can just hit the ball out of the park, no problem whatsoever. But everything, it's just so easy to pick up and play because, like I said, the batting is basically based on where it's very easy to aim the ball. So if you want it, hit to opposite field, then you just kind of move your character. Like, let's say you have a left-handed batter. You move your character over to the right and kind of position him so that the angle with which you're hitting the bat is facing up and to the left, sort of thing. Like, when the pitch comes in, you kind of position your character such that wherever he's positioned, he's going to hit the ball that away. But you also have to hold down A to swing through completely. So, and what that lets you do is it lets you be very choosy about where you position the bat. And of course, so, if you're so bunting is just literally having your swing go through 50% of the way so that you're holding the bat straight. So and I love it because there's no crazy mechanics. There's no, strange thing that you do to bunt. There's nothing special about it. It's just where you happen to end your follow through with the bat. So it's really, really cool. Go ahead, James.
I was gonna say, I played this with my cousin back in the early 90s. We would go to my grandparents' house on Sunday.
Yeah.
As you can imagine how long it took us to get through a season.
Mm-hmm.
But we might each get to play one game a night. But when we had a game against each other, like it was like a big fucking deal. Like we would see it the week before and go like, "Oh shit, we're going to play each other next week."
Yeah.
Oh, this is going to be awesome. And a lot of times what would happen is somebody would just get way out in front of somebody else and it would just be misery. Like you'd just be miserable.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd be like, "Oh, I've still got 30 minutes of this game and I hate him. I want to kill him with this Super Nintendo cord."
Yeah, because the games become so long.
And he's just throwing rockets at me the whole time. He's still using his... So... Oh, God. So, John, let me ask. Are you a Super League player or no?
No. I've never been a Super League... Even when this game first came out, I was not a Super League player. I never dabbled in that. Just because... Well, and and the thing is, that's because to me, the game was so over the top as it was.
So, we're talking about like people know what this is. So, there's 3 leagues in the game. The Atlantic, the Northern, and Ultra, I think is actually what it's called. I don't know why it's Atlantic and Northern. Fuck you, Pacific and Southern. Get out of here. And then Ultra is different. So Pacific and Northern are just regular baseball in this kind of arcadey style game. But Ultra, everybody has superpowers. And it might be that, like, the pitcher, when it throws the ball, it does the whole ninja replacement thing and disappears and appears in the catcher's hand.
Yep.
Like, shit that makes it basically unhittable. Batters have similar powers, so if they connect, my favorite is the rocket, which is if a opposing player catches a rocket, so batter activates his rocket power. I don't know if there's any downside for activating your powers.
I don't think so.
It's a choice. You don't have to do it. And then if you make good connection with the ball, if somebody tries to catch the ball literally takes them from their feet like a rocket and slams them into the back wall, and then they pass out.
Yep.
There's another one that makes the ball explode if somebody catches it. Like it's just extra layers of fuckery.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we were playing because we were dumb kids. And so like there was a sense of, okay, this is just going to be a nightmare. And his pitcher is just throwing rocket pitches every single time. And if I hit them, I die. So this sucks. And I hate it. Why is it like this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The core batting and pitching mechanic is so simple and so satisfying. I just picked it up and just started playing. I was like, oh yeah, right. Okay. So this is how the fielding works. Oh, right. I remember this. And, there's a lot of stuff where it's, a hit will, I don't know. It's like you know exactly when a ball is going to drop in and when it's just going to go to somebody. Like it's just very, very quick. You'll make a hit and, it goes right to the pitcher and it's over. Or, it's just, there's really no real, room for interpretation in any of the plays. So it's really kind of bang, bang baseball. But it's super fun. I love it. It's completely a game that you can just pick up and play really quickly and have a quick game. And you can set it to, 9 innings, 5 innings, 3 innings, 1 inning. So if you just feel like, banging out something really quickly, you can do that. Just really, I always used to laugh when, you would just crank a home run and it would go out of the stadium. Like just completely out of the stadium and just be gone.
The animation for a home run is so good too.
Yeah.
Like I can still see it. Like there's this weird crowd zoom, and then you get like the home run logo flying across the screen in like rainbow colors.
Mm-hmm.
I can still hear the inning change.
Yep.
Uh,
go on the
Yeah, I can
on the
hear that.
jumbotron. It's so silly.
I'm gonna die, and that's what I'm gonna like. The last thought that's gonna pop through my head is that noise. And I'm gonna go, fuck you, Culture Brain, and then dead.
Yeah, it's like this. Like, there's no way. I wouldn't say this is a good game.
Good game.
Okay, it's a good game. It's a good game, but at the same time, it's very low in production value. You know, it's one of those games where it's kind of like a B tier developer. You know,
so they actually got so Culture Brain, who made this, made a bunch of baseball games. And they made the Here You Know Ken games. I'm trying to think what else they did that people might know.
Magic of
Scheherazade, yeah.
Scheherazade, yeah.
Yeah, the Super Chinese games they made.
Yeah.
A lot of their stuff got published by Natsume in the West. But they actually had the NPB license for the sequel to this game in Japan. Ultra Baseball got the NPB license, and they actually kept it for 3 full games. And then they made a new engine altogether, I think, with Pro Yaku Star, but that also had NPB. So like they were sort of the go-to baseball developers in Japan, I guess. But yeah, this game is goofy. I really like it.
Yeah. Other stuff that Culture Brain did was they did Flying Warriors.
Oh.
Yeah, they did Flying Warriors.
I think that was on the Wii U Virtual Console, and I bought it, and I regretted that. That's all I'm going to say.
I just remember Flying Warriors having a really ridiculous, like, everything. Is probably the best way of describing it. I should play this. Oh, that's right. We have online multiplayer because of the Switch, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
God, Johnny, we might need to play baseball.
Oh, yeah, I think we should.
We might need to play because I'm just so the absolute worst would be like if we both agree we're not going to use Ultra League teams, and then at the last minute somebody jumps to the Ultra League and grabs the first team, and you're literally just getting shelled the entire game. And I mean that in the most literal sense. You are being shelled like it's the Psalm. And there's nothing you can do about it. Like, it's just like, I have a pitcher out here throwing 85-mile-an-hour fastballs. You just threw a nuclear missile at my head. Fuck you.
Yep.
And, like, we would do that, like, my cousin and I would do that to each other all the fucking time. Like, there had to be, like, okay, I'm going to press the confirm button on your controller to confirm that we're not going to fuck around with Ultra teams.
Yeah, or do the old when your friend gets up to, like, you know, get a drink or something. You know, and their joystick is just sitting there unattended, their gamepad, and then you just like, you know, you're just like, oh yeah, man, don't worry, man, I just set everything up for you. You said you wanted that team, yeah, I just set that up for you. They just completely screw them up.
You're rolling in there with the pitcher who makes the ball disappear. It'll be great. They'll have a lot of fun. They'll love you. Oh my God, there's so much dickery that we were able to pull in that game.
Yeah.
Just absolute nonsense.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny, I didn't jump on this right away because I actually thought I assumed that this was the NES version and not the Super NES version, because the NES version I didn't really like.
Yeah.
But this one is great.
I didn't realize there's apparently a sequel? Super Ultra Baseball 2?
Yeah, I guess there is. Yeah, I've never seen it.
I've never encountered it.
Yeah.
I feel like this is the definitive one, though.
Yeah.
But this is sort of like Top Gear. It's one of those weird SNES games that a lot of people who had SNESs ended up owning.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't necessarily like super well known beyond that. So like a lot of people had Super Baseball Simulator.
Yeah.
It was a pretty well known game. It's just, you know, it's not one of those games that comes up a lot when people talk about the Super Nintendo library.
Well, yeah, I think it was the timing of it, because it came out in 91, so it was one of the first games, really. It was one of the first baseball games.
Oh, yeah, it definitely be one of the first baseball games.
So if you were looking for a sports game, like there weren't many at the time that it came out, so that's why I think a lot of people would have picked it up. And I just don't think at that time that that there were just many games, period.
Well, that's fair. 91 is pretty early.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what other baseball games there were on the Super Nintendo. Like I know there were some. I just don't know that I care.
It was the Griffey game later because of it was like pre-rendered. Didn't Rare make that?
It was Angel Studios.
I don't know. Maybe they just collaborated in it because
Okay.
it was using the pre-rendered. It was that. It was a lot later than the 1991 that you're talking about because it was post DKC, and obviously Griffey. That whole period, Nintendo owning the Mariners and Griffey being this huge star. And trying to sort of think. Obviously, that went into the N64 era as well, didn't it? Probably better known on the N64, but that it started on Super Nintendo.
There's a game called Relief Pitcher, which is originally an arcade game, that Left Field did, who also made baseball games for Nintendo. But the highlight of that one, this might only be in the arcade version, is that it has an announcer doing commentary, which would have been very impressive in like '92. That announcer is Jack Buck.
Crazy.
Like, I can't imagine. It had to be one of the first times professional sports announcer was hired to do commentary for a video game. It's got to be. And the fact it's Jack Buck of all. I mean, Jack Buck is like a big deal in the annals of calling baseball.
Oh yeah.
So it's pretty wild. But yeah, I don't know much about that game, so I don't know that if it was any kind of significance. But
yeah, I mean, other baseball games around this time period was apparently like Roger Clemens MVP baseball, if you remember that.
Oh my God, was it that early?
Yeah. Super Bases Loaded came out around this time too. But I didn't like that. See, I didn't like that series. I was not a Bases Loaded guy. I wasn't.
Yeah, I
wasn't really too interested in that.
Tecmo had a game. I think it was just called Super Baseball.
Yeah.
But I think there was an RBI baseball, but I doubt it was very good.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. So Nolan Ryan and Roger Clemens both had Super Nintendo baseball games the same year.
Yep. I saw that.
I don't think it's just the idea that Roger Clemens was that big in '91 and thinking about just remembering him playing much later than that.
Yeah.
It's almost like he had something that was helping him keep going or something. I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like some kind of substance.
Something that prolonged his career. I don't know.
Maybe made him heal faster.
Yeah, who knows? But Tecmo did have Super Baseball that came out in '94. So that
there were a lot of baseball games. Like I'm just going through the list now, and like it was a different world back then. Baseball was maybe it wasn't king at that point anymore, but it was still a huge deal. It was clear baseball's a bigger deal than people make it out to be, but it's a regional big deal versus being a national big deal.
Yeah. But yeah, now I'm curious about Super Ultra Baseball 2. That came out in '94. Oh no, was it released though? Because I know it was it might have came out in Japan only. I think it was canceled for the U.S.
I want to see Frank Thomas Big Hurt Baseball.
Yeah,
I kind of want to know what that's like. Because there are the two Griffey games. Griffey would have got. I mean, that first Griffey game, he would have been very young too.
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, he came in as a rock star, so it's not shocking that he would have had a game very young.
Mm-hmm.
Griffey was sainted from the word go, essentially.
Yeah. The man with the perfect swing, of course.
Yeah. But look, he did. Even when he was falling asleep in the clubhouse, that swing was still beautiful. When he woke up to come back out to bat when it was his turn.
Yep.
I will never say a bad thing about Griffey. Never, ever.
But yeah, Super Baseball Simulator, amazing game. I love it to death. Let's see, other stuff I've been playing. Actually, I did get my PlayStation 5, right? So, downloaded a bunch of that stuff. I haven't really played it very much. It's pretty much gone entirely according to script. I figured, I'm going to buy a PlayStation 5 and it's going to sit there because I have a bunch of other stuff to play. So that's pretty much what's happened. But I did manage to play a little bit of Horizon Zero Dawn. Holy crap, that game looks good. I really forgot how good Guerrilla Games actually look. Like,
yeah, that's so specialty.
Yeah. I did pick up Mortal Kombat 11, which is also on Switch, which is obviously takes a hit in the graphics department, but they hold it to 60 frames per second, which I think is always the wise choice. I was playing it on Xbox Series X. The game looks amazing. Really deep fighting system, but they have a really extensive tutorial system, which I thought was really cool. So I've kind of been just playing around with that. There's like a ton of tutorials, and by that I mean probably close to 400 tutorials that you can go through.
Oh my god.
There's a ton. I mean, they go through, which impresses me because a lot of these games, like one of the things that turns me off to fighting games is that they really don't have good tutorials, and they rely on you to kind of figure a lot of it out yourself, or this is like really in-depth stuff, like they go into like frames and stuff like that, and canceling moves, like all of that kind of stuff, which for most fighting games that I've been exposed to, that's sort of, you kind of have to go online and kind of see how people do that and sort of
grind
like
out tech, as they say.
Yeah.
Or go into the salt mines to learn.
Yeah, exactly. And so they expose all of that in this, which really impressed me. Game looks amazing, of course, on the Series X, I'm sure, on most other consoles too.
I've heard it compared favorably to Xrds. Excuse me, if you're not in the scene, Guilty Gear Xrds tutorials, which were at the time regarded as like, oh, these might be the best tutorials in a fighting game ever.
Yeah.
Because it does a lot of that stuff of like, no, we're going to teach you fucking everything.
Oh yeah, and what they do here is they actually have a controller on screen, and you can press the menu button or whatever the heck it's called on Xbox, the select button to me, and it will actually play you the move, and on the controller it shows you exactly what buttons it's hitting as it plays through the move. And so you can it'll just sit there and replay. And so you can just sit there and watch exactly what it does. But the most important thing with that is the timing. It shows you the timing, right? Because there's certain things with Mortal Kombat where it's weird because what happens on screen doesn't really match the way that you have to input the moves, right? So usually it's like, if you input a move, it's like bang, 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 bang. But what you see on screen might be just because of the animations and stuff. And I'm sure for fighting game people, they're like, yeah, of course, this is every fighting game, you idiot. But, they also have, kind of like the animations where, you're punching somebody and it zooms in and their bones crack. And so there's a little bit of that sort of showmanship that isn't necessarily directly tied to your move inputs, even though you have to put the move inputs in a very quick sequence in order to get that combo to occur. And so it goes through all of that kind of stuff. And so it's really good. I mean, I was really impressed as someone who hasn't really touched fighting games much in the last couple of years for a while. The way that, it kind of opens up everything. And if you want to learn it, you can learn it. So it's really, really good. But yeah, that's about it.
Cool. Guillaume.
Yep.
What you got?
So I finished Romancing Saga 3, a game that I managed to kind of play through in like a few weeks. So basically I never mentioned that I had started it on the podcast, and now I'm done with it. Quick version of my origin story. I basically learned English trying to play Final Fantasy Legend 2 on the Game Boy with like a Harap's French-English dictionary, and it was like a formative experience, but also it was a really good game. Like maybe I couldn't fully understand the text, especially since it was riddled with mistakes, but like it was a really good game with really good music, and I've talked about it more recently, and like because I went back to it just maybe 2 years ago, which is pre-pandemic, so it feels like 10 years ago, but it's quite recent. And I would say that Final Fantasy Legend 2 holds up. Like it's still a good game that you should play, and of course it's available on the Switch now in the Collection of Saga, or something like that. Yes. So
close enough.
Yes. Of course, like growing up, like I learned that, like the first, like these games are not Final Fantasy games. They're called Saga. What is this? I learned that stuff, of course. And then eventually I learned like, wait, they made this series for the Super Nintendo, but it never left Japan. What? So I always was curious about those other games that were on the Super Nintendo, I always like, wow, like these, tiny little RPGs that were so good that I played on the Game Boy, there's like a bigger, better version in color on the Super Nintendo, and I can't play it. So I was always kind of fascinated by that. And then, maybe like in 2016 or 2017, Romancing Saga 2 came out on the Switch, and I played maybe an hour of it, and I was utterly confused, and I was kind of unimpressed by the way it looked, and I kind of dropped it. And then the next year, Romancing Saga 3, well, no, not the next year, but like in 2019, at the end of the year, Romancing Saga 3 came out on the Switch. Again, a remastered version, and I didn't play it right away because I'm an idiot who buys too many games. But recently, Johnny Metz was online. I don't remember who he was talking to, but on Twitter, like he mentioned having started it or having bought it.
Yeah.
And I told him, like we should try to play this game together at the same time and maybe like motivate each other to actually finish it. And so he was like, sure. And I was like, okay, but not right away because I'm in the middle of like a Yakuza game, which I'm playing in the middle of a playthrough of Nier Automata. So I was I was busy already. But Johnny went and started it before I did. And so I finished Yakuza, I finished Nier, and then I finally could start Romancing Saga 3. And Johnny had stopped playing it and moved on to Grandia. So, yep. But I guess what I'm here to say is that Romancing Saga 3 is really good, and I think that Johnny should go back to it and finish it, because it is absolutely a really fun game. But
is it playable as an intro to the series?
I think that the best intro to the series is still Final Fantasy Legend 2. But like my intro to the series, because I've explained these reasons before, but basically like there's a number of things in that game that make it so that it's very noob friendly. Like the numbers will always go up, when you go, when you fight. Of course, I need to explain that in these Saga games, like you don't get, experience points. Instead, your stats go up more or less depending on what you're doing in the game during the battles. So that was true in Final Fantasy Legend 2. But like it was not a, maybe you had to grind a bit, but as a kid, I managed to get through that game. And so I think that probably most people should be able to, as long as they steer clear of the monster class. Which is, you can have like humans, mutants, or robots, or monsters in your party. Just avoid the monsters altogether.
The numbers don't make sense on that one, I believe, is what you've said in the past. How to make number go up. Yeah,
they don't. So, anyway, I think that's still the best, the best entry point. But Romancing Saga 3, it's a very different beast. Like the title is different because it's a different series with like slightly different mechanics. I do think that probably Romancing Saga 3 is the best introduction to the Romance Saga trilogy. The numbers go up always, and I found myself really having fun just like poking at it, trying to I'm going too fast here. The game is very open-ended. And like one of the characteristics of the Romancing Saga games is that you've got 8 heroes. Stop me if you've heard this before. You've got 8 heroes that you can select to play as. And so, the game is going to be slightly different, perhaps. Like the starting point is going to be slightly different. Certainly, like their motivations, like the beginning of the story is going to be slightly different depending on who you choose. But they all have the same basic, goal, ultimately. Like it's all the same main plotline. And you meet the other heroes that you didn't pick during your adventure, and sometimes you can recruit them in your party. So the whole like Octopath Traveler, or if you've played the Alliance Alive or Legend of Legacy, like it's all inspired by this So that's where it comes from.
There is an Enix game that is escaping me that has a very similar thing going on.
Seventh Saga or something?
Yeah. But guess how many characters there are in that one?
7?
Hey, I believe that's correct.
But yeah, so the whole deal here is that like the game is very open-ended, and so you start in your starting town and you talk to the townsfolk, and eventually, as you talk to more and more people, the world map is not really a world map. Like it is a world map, but I mean, like, it's literally a map, and you select like the next town and dungeon that you're going to go to. But things will only appear in your map if you've heard of them, or if you've heard where they are from the people that you talk to. So you talk to everyone in the town, and they might mention like, oh, the Rotten Sea, which is basically like a, noxious swamp. The Rotten Sea, like, is just west of here. And so when you exit that town, then you'll see that on your map you can go to the Rotten Sea, which is like your next dungeon that you can go to. So basically, like, when I mentioned, like, I really enjoyed poking at this game and making numbers go up, like, I feel like I'm going to keep saying poking because it really describes accurately what you do in this game. You will hit walls. You will, like, every time, and that's something that Johnny mentioned on Twitter. Like, he said basically, like, every time that I arrived at a boss and I thought that I was prepared to take them on, the game was like, nah, you're not. So what you end up doing, like, and that's my experience too. Like, so what you end up doing is, like, you try, okay, like, here is like some sort of side quest. You try to get as far into it as you can. Eventually you might hit a wall and, not be able to finish it, but you still gained, your stats went up. You might have discovered new places to go. So you go there instead. And, you try to do that everywhere that you unlock. Go as far into dungeons as you can, and try to make things happen. And eventually, some of the side quests I did were at my level. I could finish them. It felt good to be able to clear them. And eventually, I kept trying to beat these bosses, and I couldn't. And eventually I found one that I could beat. And so, that felt really good. And then I went back, and like the dam had been broken. Like, basically, like, I cleared the 4 main bosses that you have to clear for in the main story, kind of all pretty quickly. And I guess that comes with the open-ended nature of like the structure of this game, since like you can basically go almost anywhere from the start as long as you've heard of them. Of those places, like the difficulty is kind of the same throughout, or almost, at least for those bosses. But anyway, but yeah, so it felt really good to finally kind of make a lot of progress in this game, and it happened kind of early-ish, like maybe like 20 hours into the game. So I thought, like, wow, like, this game is not the 50 hours that it was advertised as. In various guides and stuff like that I had browsed through. And but no, then like there's a 5th kind of gate, a 5th dungeon that you have to go close for the main story. And I tried to take that on, and I was not ready. So basically, like, my early time with this game was a lot of like me trying to approach this game on its own terms, trying to figure things out on my own. I did look like at a few like, beginner's tips for the game, but like mostly I was trying to figure things out for myself, and kind of unlocking new places to go through like just trial and error or things like that. Eventually that didn't really work anymore. Because one of the things that this game does is that you can have a party of 6 people, but there are way more than 6, or even way more than 8 people that you can recruit in your party. And sometimes those people will be the thing that allows you to start a side quest, or even to go and, to do something in the main quest. But you're not gonna know that they're important, or that, like the point at which you will need them for, like, to continue, like a side quest or something. It's not going to be apparent that it's the start of a side quest if you don't already have that person in your party. But then, like, there's weird stuff where, like, you can only have a maximum of 6 people in your party, and sometimes they will refuse to leave the party if you ask them to. And so, like, the trial and error thing at a certain point kind of breaks down. Like, it doesn't really work, because unless you know very specifically that the little, like, pink-haired girl in that one town who just automatically like goes to you and joins your party against your will, if you don't know that you need to go to this other specific town to make her leave your party, then you're going to be stuck with her the whole time, and that might prevent you from having other opportunities to recruit other people that would be more useful at that point. So that's
Does
one
she
of the things.
Out of curiosity,
Yeah, she's not very good. Apparently, like, she's got her stats would make her good with, like, a how do you pronounce that? A rapier or an épée?
Yep.
Anyway, kind of a fencing
yes.
sword. But those weapons suck. So the trick apparently is to equip her with something better. But she's not very good. But I was stuck with her for the longest time. So at a certain point, I felt like I had to go to guides, but I did so after finding out a lot of things by myself. So I still feel like I got the Kawazu experience. I still got the Romancing Saga experience. But then, like, it was really helpful to actually follow a guide that explained to me, you need this person and then go to this place to be able to make all this other stuff happen. So that's what I would recommend people. But like, it's hard. So I was having a blast playing through this. Like, I was actually playing through it, during E3, and I was kind of a little bit checked out during E3. Like, I'm looking forward to Metroid, but I'm not super excited, for future stuff, because I was having so much fun with this RPG. And so I tweeted at the time that I was really enjoying Romancing Saga 3, and that made me feel like I was out of step with everyone. And I wasn't sure what I would need to say to convince people that they need to play this. And do people even need to play this? They probably don't. But then shortly after that, like, I posted about kind of a critical thing where, like, there was, like, a story critical item that I needed to continue the story, and I had given it to this character that I made leave my party. And I had also equipped that character. I didn't know about this, but I had also equipped that character. So both with the thing I needed to continue the story and the thing I needed to recruit him back. And so I had to go and load up a previous save. And a listener, Null No More, was like, I may have found a reason why you're having trouble convincing people to play this game. And, like, yeah. It's not perfect. It's very, there's a few, like, oddities like that. But I don't know, like...
Do you think some of those oddities add to the charm? Or are they just consistently annoying?
I think they do. Like, the thing is, like, it is very opaque, and it's hard to know where to go next, but it's not a terribly complex... Shit. Okay, so the Canadian won.
It's happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I see. Okay, yeah, they were in overtime, and so the Canadiens scored. Yeah.
I guess they won, so there you go.
Yeah. God.
Nice.
Okay.
Where was I? Okay, so like, it adds to the charm, but the thing, like, so as opaque as the game can be, and maybe, like, a little bit user unfriendly, it's not a complex game. Like, the numbers always go up. I don't feel like there's a ton of strategy per se. Like, in the end, I finished I ended up beating the game by following a guide to know, like, places to grind to get the gear that I would need to be able to survive against the final boss. And I feel like that's the thing. Like the people who love this game, who played this game since like they found a translation patch, online, so the people who wrote the guides, like clearly, like they're a little bit biased. Like sometimes they give advice that didn't make sense. Like, I think that you should try to keep a party of 5 people so that you can recruit the 6th person. When you see them, like you might not know that you can recruit someone unless you have an empty spot in your party. It's like, well, that advice only makes sense if you know how to get rid of people that you don't want in your party, or if you know when you can safely jettison a person from your party, So, yeah, anyway, so there's a few things like that I think that it's helpful that we live in 2021 and that we have the internet at our disposal to be able to look stuff up. But overall, like it's a challenging game in that like it's pretty hard to get to the point where you have the stats necessary to face the final boss. But it's not a hard game in terms of figuring out a strategy or anything. And yeah, so this is a remaster. It's by Arte Piazza, who remastered, who made the Dragon Quest 4, 5, 6, etc. for the 3DS and the DS. So they've got, a history of remaking these RPGs, and this is a pretty good port. The sprites seem to be faithful mostly to the Super Famicom original, but the backgrounds, the environments are HD. And initially it was kind of a little bit shocking to the eyes. I was like, I'm not sure I like this, but I've gotten used to it, and I think that the game looks quite nice. And the HD backgrounds with the non-HD sprites don't clash as much as I would have expected. And also it's not a case of a bad Final Fantasy mobile or PC port where the tiles don't make sense. The tiling is bad or anything like that. Those games, those ports are objectively badly done. And I think in this case, it looks quite nice. It's quite well done. Some of the sprites, like the bosses, they've animated the sprites, and it's quite neat. The attacks have really neat special effects. The music is really good. So the Kenji Ito was the composer for Final Fantasy Legend 2. The music in that game is great. And that was a Game Boy. So, turns out that he managed to do a whole lot more on the Super Famicom. And, so really great music. And yeah, I just, and the enemy sprites, this is a, once Nomura came in and did some sprites for Final Fantasy 5 and 6, and the game started to have maybe more cutesy enemies, the Tonberries and stuff like that. Romancing Saga does not have cute enemies. They're
monsters.
Yeah, the monsters are all quite monstrous, all quite kind of out of a D&D manual. Some of the, there's an enemy called the Nosferatu, which is a skeleton that seems to be crouching, and it's got an umbrella that's a bat at the end of it. And, so yeah. So it's I don't know, I really enjoyed the sprites in this game. And, also, when they're not monstrous, they're booby. The mermaids are very well endowed. And, at first, the first time I encountered them, I was, looking at the menus in the battle, and Karen was next to me, and she was like, whoa.
Are you saying what? You read this game for the menus? Is that what it is?
No, but I didn't immediately notice I didn't notice immediately just how risque how risque some of these sprites were, but eventually I noticed.
Yep. Romancing Saga 3.
Yes.
What is the system of origin here?
Super Famicom.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess Nintendo in Japan didn't care, so there's a lot more freedom to move in that region. So yeah.
Yeah.
No, okay, it checks out.
Yeah, and I think that the sprites were done by a woman, as if that absolves anyone of anything. But I mean,
if it needs absolution, I mean, I don't know that necessarily it does.
Probably not. Like, it's not. I don't think anyone would have been. Well, I don't know. I can't speak about anyone, but yeah.
So
anyway,
there is definitely someone who got horny from those sprites. Yes,
maybe. Yeah, probably.
But that wasn't necessarily the intent of the drawing.
No.
The mermaids are broadly historically depicted as topless because they are sirens. Like that is the whole idea of the thing. They are to luring sailors to their death.
Right. Yes. So anyway, moving on from that, all I meant to say is that this is a good-looking game. I really enjoyed the sprite work. I really, I'm really happy that I ended up enjoying this, because otherwise it would have been 50 hours of misery. And even though like the last 5-10 hours have been a lot of grinding, and that wasn't really all that engaging, not as much as the earlier game when I was investigating this monster that had set shop up in a cave next to this village, and the village had to sacrifice their women to this monster to appease it. And then the mayor was like, "Hey, you want to help us out?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And then I went to the cave, and the mayor just pushed a boulder in front of the entrance and was like, "Okay, go solve this. I'm sacrificing you, and either way, I'm gonna win from this." And anyway, and then you get to the end of the cave, and you realize that the monster is actually a giant sea of rats. So all of that was really engaging in terms of story and stuff like that. The last 10 hours were more grinding against the same enemy over and over to get that thing that had a 2% chance of dropping. So even though, the ending was not as strong as the beginning, I really enjoyed my time. And I think, I don't know. If you were interested in old RPGs that never left Japan, from the Super Nintendo era, if you're interested in Square Enix stuff, definitely give it a shot. And especially if you've played the Game Boy Final Fantasy games, I think that you could enjoy this.
Cool. Anything else you want to talk about?
That's quite enough.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and take a pause here. Greg, we will hit some new business from Greg next week. We just went a little long in the segment, and he graciously has allowed us to move on to try to squeeze some more email in. So.
Oh yeah. Well, next week you'll be getting the filibuster.
Well, that's fine. Do it. I won't have as much to talk about.
I'm not
next
done
week.
talking about Luigi's Mansion.
Great. I want to hear everything there is to hear about why the Portrait Ghost's omission from Luigi's Mansion 2 was a great failure. So. When we come back, we will have the triumphant return of the listener mail segment, so please stay tuned. We are back with listener mail. You can send your emails to rfn@tenderworldreport.com. We have a decent backlog, but there's not a ton of new fresh topical stuff in there. So give us some new fresh topical stuff to drop in there. We just had E3. Ask us some E3 related questions. Ask us what we think about this attempt at hosting a show during a pandemic and how it was received. Ask us whatever you want. I could just declare that's the topic, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to devote the listener mail segment to you. So I'm not going to talk about the listener mail segment anymore. Instead, we're just going to do listener mail. And Greg, since you didn't get to do new business, would you care to read the first email?
Sure, yeah. So, David writes, "Hey RFN crew, this week there was a report that Forever Entertainment, developer of the 2020 Panzer Dragoon remake, has entered a publishing deal with Nintendo. They will receive, quote, significant financial support from Nintendo to release several titles on Nintendo Switch, end quote, according to the report. This got me thinking about what games could come out of this deal. Could we get a new Sin and Punishment game or remake from this? Could they remake Star Fox 64 once again? I am curious to hear your thoughts and predictions. Thanks, and keep up the great work."
Yeah, so this was a press release that Forever put out. Nintendo, I don't think, has put out literally anything. I think they've just completely, whatever. which there was a conversation we had off the air about the phrase significant contribution means a very different thing between the two parties involved here.
But so will they be the developers or will they be the publishers?
So this is the tricky part. So Forever Entertainment primarily is a publisher.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I do believe they have some development capacity, but I don't know that they actually did the development for Panzer Dragoon.
I really don't know. The names in that those credits were all, well, I don't know from what country, but like
Polish.
European, Polish.
They're
Forever
based in
Polish.
Krakow, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. But I don't know that they actually did the work. Like, I think they may have been just the publisher on that one. I'm not sure, but there is, they are a publisher and at a minimum, they contract development for stuff. So that they are, whether or not they have hard development assets themselves or they just coordinate to bring assets in to do it, relatively immaterial. Nintendo, personally, lists Panzer Dragoon Remake. Nintendo does a pretty good job of listing developer and publisher when they have it. They don't for Panzer Dragoon Remake. They just list publisher and call it Forever.
Like what I'm saying is that Megapixel Studio, a Polish video game developer, is a subsidiary of Forever Entertainment, and they are the developer of Panzer Dragoon Remake.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, that feels more like what we're looking at here then. I guess the question is, so again, Nintendo has said, fuck all. Like,
and this is sort of part of a pattern because a few months ago, Forever had a similar sort of statement about that they were entering into a partnership with of some description with Square Enix about creating and releasing several game remakes based on one particular IP of theirs, of Square Enix's, to be named later, I guess, in baseball trading parlance.
Future considerations.
Yeah, so, they've been busy securing rights to do these sorts of things. And of course, in the indie world, the last indie presentation that Nintendo had, you had the House of the Dead game,
right,
which some people always say, well, what's that in? Because Forever Entertainment has licensed House of the Dead from Sega to make that remake. So yeah, in the same fashion as with Panzer Dragoon. So yeah, they obviously they've done some Sega stuff, or in the process of doing more Sega stuff, and now we've got Nintendo, Square Enix. What exactly now? I feel like where the sort of direction that the letter originally came from, with David talking about Sin and Punishment, Star Fox makes sense because what have we had? Panzer Dragoon, House of the Dead. Those are some of the first things you're going to think of. I mean, for me, I've said this plenty of times over the years. The original Star Fox and also possibly Star Fox 2. Are the ones that kind of need the remake treatment more than Star Fox 64, to say the least. It's nice that they got re-released on the Super Nintendo Mini and on Super Nintendo Online for Switch, but like an actual remakes where you can have a smooth and stable frame rate and the kind of more stylized version, perhaps, of the flat shaded kind of graphics, like that would make sense. I think absolutely, and adapting. Obviously, look, the game design you wouldn't expect to change a lot. So, the games are still going to be built around the limited controls that they had with the Super Nintendo controller. But still, for just ease of use, it's going to be nicer to play them, especially 2. Because using the shoulder buttons to kind of, move around sort of tank style is not the greatest. It might unbalance the game a bit, but as an option at least to just make it easier to move around and stuff with a more current controller, I could see that benefiting from a remake.
I'm gonna let y'all talk before I come in here and be the Grim Reaper.
Well, I don't know. Like, the Forever Entertainment as a publisher doesn't have the greatest of track records, and even Panzer Dragoon Remake, came out. It was not well received. It was bad, yeah. Like, so I waited personally for that first big patch before I bought it. Yeah,
like it's still not like considered great, but it's
long load times between levels and stuff like that. But I still like having been able to compare the visuals between the original and the remake. Like I was not initially that impressed by the visuals in the remake, but after seeing what they pulled off, like what the original actually looked like, I'm a little bit more impressed. Like there was more that went into that than I thought initially.
Yeah, but if you're going to have to remake the graphics so significantly, why not make them look good? Like, they've made a bunch of steps from a Sega Saturn game, but...
Yeah, but I still feel like it looked pretty good. Like, I felt like it managed to give me maybe like a Saturn feel without giving me a Saturn game, if you know what I mean. Like, even the intro has animation to it that seems to be straight out of a Saturn game. Before there was motion capture, there was very stilted movement.
There was jank.
Yeah, and so I felt I kind of liked the intro because it gave me that kind of that nostalgia for old, badly animated early CG without giving me fully like that old badly animated CG. They improved it, but not so much that it became, to today's standards, but it gave me the feeling of an old ass, CG cutscenes.
It's a balancing act, isn't it, I think, with this kind of thing, especially because, presumably, you've got to think, in all these cases, it's, their ability to license these things from, IP, the big major IP holders, probably based on the fact that these are things that they can't really be bothered to do that much with themselves.
I mean, nobody gave a shit about Panzer Dragoon in a long time.
Yeah, so, it's like they're coming in, presumably without, they're not forever themselves are not going to be spending a great deal of money, to make this happen. It's not something that the IP holders would be willing to spend a great deal of money to make happen, but, just at the right point, it can line up for everybody and make some sort of sense. So given those sorts of constraints and just the fact that you're dealing with, these games, presumably, a lot of the business model is, selling them to people who remember them and, played them, the first time around, or at least, kind of hoped or wanted to play them, but couldn't because of whatever it might have been. You might have been a one console person back in the day because it was expensive or various things like that. But, if you're selling to those people, it is a balancing act because it wouldn't even, I don't know how much sense it would make to just like with the, aforementioned Star Fox 1 and 2 kind of idea. Like, I don't think just making them look awesome is really like the way that makes the most sense. I wouldn't say no, but it kind of makes more sense if it's just like, well, no, we're gonna like retain like the kind of flat shaded, like low poly kind of look, but we're going to clean it up and make it, like, kind of stylized or something. So it looks like it's more of an artistic choice than just, this is a 3D game running on a system that was not designed for anything of the kind,
Yeah, so, like give it like a smooth frame rate, maybe actually put like trees and stuff in the world instead of just, I don't know, nothing.
So yeah, some embellishment, but nothing that like really kind of totally changes the aesthetic or the game itself. So that's the kind of thing I can imagine. But of course, that is just speculations. Very little to go on here.
So I don't think I would want Forever Entertainment to actually try to make a new Sin and Punishment or a new Star Fox. I'm not sure if they could.
I'm not sure new anything is that much on the cards, is it?
Yeah.
From the pedigree.
But even like another Star Fox remake, like I don't think we necessarily need that. Or like Sin and Punishment is good, but I kind of think what I would like to see maybe is Pilot Wing 64. Is as a series that kind of that never really came back until was that weirdly absent from the Virtual Console, or yeah, it was weirdly absent from Virtual Console. We did get Pilot Wings Resort, but that's the only appearance of that series that we've seen since 64.
That has some kind of 64 references in it, right? Because it has the Mecha Hawk or whatever the character with the mustache.
Like, I wondered if it was just an emulation thing. Like,
I always was it Paradigm, the flight simulator like company that helped develop it. Like, is there some issue with them like having to sign off on this or something? I really just try to think what was different about Pilot Wing 64 versus all those other N64 games that did show up. Obviously,
Nintendo keeps cramming the Super Nintendo Pilot Wings on whatever, everything they can.
Yeah, that
it's just that no one wants that game.
I would say no one wants that game, but I mean, I think 64, probably in some ways had a little bit of a more of a long look because there were just so few. They were both early games. They were they're both similar sort of remits about show something that the system could do, in a new way. But I think the thing with the Super Nintendo is it quickly had a lot of games to choose from, whereas with N64 it was much less true. Especially those first few months.
Yeah, might as well explore a little USA for the 60th time.
There you go.
Why not?
So I wonder what goes on there, but anything that could actually get that a new lease of life would be nice, because it's been kind of forgotten about, really. I mean, even DK64 showed up on Wii U, didn't it?
Yes.
Which was a notable omission on the Wii Virtual Console, but still no dice, I don't think, for Pilot Wing 64.
Nope. So
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's all. Like I really miss it. I want to play that again. So
all right, fair enough.
And it doesn't look like we're going to get a Nintendo 64 Mini anytime soon. So
well, and if we did, would it be on it? I get, like maybe only something where it's like, oh, this is like a completely new, not completely new, but some sort of like new piece of software rather than just it's emulated and it's a virtual console or it's a mini console or it's a branch of Switch Online. Like I just which I feel like. We should have for N64, because I think James mentioned this online multiplayer with Super Baseball Simulator 1000.
Right.
Like, I mean, I think it would be much harder to forget about the fact there's online multiplayer if it had an N64 branch.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone would be told, you can play Mario Kart 64 again or whatever else, because it was so embedded in the N64 kind of, user base. It's just like, this is a multiplayer console. It's such a big part of the, and that would actually sell it more than like everyone just thinks about Super Nintendo Online or NES Online as being like, it's just like a different version of the Virtual Console. It's like Virtual Console never had online multiplayer, but no one really seems to give a shit with the range of games.
Yeah, when Mario is just like, 2 players, player 1 plays and then player 2 plays. Yeah.
Yeah, and there are some multiplayer games on there. But I think if you did an N64 one, you could tout that feature a great deal more than they have done. But even then, on the basis of their previous ventures, we probably wouldn't get Pilot Wing 64. But anyway, that's that.
All right, John, where are you at before I come in here and just be a complete stick in the mud?
Yeah, it's kind of a tough call. I just wonder what caliber of games they would be remaking. Whether...
Bad.
Yeah,
I would say bad, but I think commercially not that sexy. I think he's really the biggest. There are good, like the original Sin and Punishment probably does qualify as one of those in terms. I personally consider it to be a very good game, but it's probably not sexy enough. Actually, I think it's so.
Would Treasure let them? Like, that's the other part.
Like, I don't know. Yeah, what rights they retain in that, but we do know it's come back on Virtual Console, unlike something like a Pilot Wing 64 that has come back before.
I wouldn't even say it come back. Like, it came to regions that didn't have it.
Yeah, although there was zero localization required. I think it was basically done, but just never released. And of course, there was a sequel on Wii as well. But it's I feel like that is in terms of the caliber, that's probably the best that we could hope for. You know what I mean? Something that's not that commercially huge, but maybe they think they could. There's a niche there that they could bring something back like that.
Yeah, I mean, just because I'd love to see this game get more exposure than it ever really did. I'd love to see them, remake Eternal Darkness. That would be really cool.
That game needs a lot of work, though.
It does. The other game would be Disaster Day of Crisis, of course.
I mean, that game needs more work than is humanly existent.
Obviously.
Good call, John.
There are not enough developers in the world to fix that game.
For people who may not remember, because it did have a lot of different bits and pieces to it, it is principally like House of the Dead. That's the bulk of the game, is that shooting gallery kind of gameplay.
Bad. That's the other part. It's not good at it.
But just think where they could take it, James.
Yeah.
And it's would Nintendo allow them to market this as something that was, to some extent, the product of the developers of Xenoblade as well?
No.
Would they want the name drag, Monolith's name drag through the mud in that way?
They would have to change the history so it was unsealed from an Etruscan time capsule. Like, this is the last thing. This is the last relic of the votive scripts of the Etruscans. Is Disaster Day of Crisis. Definitely don't go look at Japan and figure out where this came from.
It was famously vetoed by NOA. Didn't come out anyway.
By Reggie, who gloated about it later. He's like, look at it. It's like
I think that is. It's got its warts and stuff. And it obviously went through a fair bit of development hell, because it was shown a lot in E3 06, and then it didn't come out until 08, I want to say. It was supposed to be an early game. You kind of felt it's that kind of game again.
Right.
That launch window-ish kind of, where it's like, let's show some things this system could do that other systems couldn't, or whatever. And, for it to be coming out in 08, things obviously didn't go very smoothly, to say the least. But, I mean, come on. Nintendo of America has greenlit worse.
That's true.
Let's not kid ourselves.
This was the height of Wii at the point that they wanted to bring it out, and they had
and more
priorities.
to the point, good God, I mean, some of the, not from Nintendo, but some of the stuff that was coming out on Wii in general.
Look, they had other things to deal with. They weren't going to deal with Ray and Steve!
It was also, in terms of the whole, action movie...
he fights a mech on the deck of an aircraft carrier with a handgun. It doesn't make any sense.
In terms of the action movie kind of zeitgeist that it was, riffing off as well, it was, 10 years too late. That was one of the weird things.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if it'd come in 06, it would have been 8 years too late. Or it's just it was weird in so many ways. I know we might, it's a sort of meme.
We still owe people a stream of that shit too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Deeply upsetting.
It's otherwise it's going to be the DK plus Steve Historia, so
hey, we're not on the hook for the DK Historia.
No, but they're gonna it's join together in some sort of mutant.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with the DK and Steve Historia. Is what Kong is most like Steve?
The time that DK dropped Steve in a volcano.
Oh, I see. They could have put him in there in the. Just missed opportunities. All right, so I'm here now to be the somber voice of reason, which is Nintendo actually has issued a comment on this. IGN reached out to all the parties involved, and I want to quote them exactly because that's important. Quote: Nintendo is supporting Forever Entertainment via a fund for Nintendo Switch game development. End quote. So one note is they don't mention the word significant, because it probably isn't to them.
Yep.
But the other thing is the press release that Forever put out for this one. It actually wasn't a press release. It was like a filing in Poland. Doesn't mention IPs. The Square Enix one did.
Yeah, very, very, as I said, very specific that it's going to be several remakes from one IP of theirs. Yeah,
this also does not mention IP. This doesn't, and the comment that Forever put out in English does not mention it either. All it says is there's a material agreement between the two companies that Forever Entertainment will receive financial support from Nintendo on an implementation of a publishing agreement, the purpose of which is to release several titles on Switch from the Forever Entertainment publishing plan. The release dates of games will be reported in the future. If you go to Forever Entertainment's website, they have the Attract Top, which is just a looping video of some of their different games. But the very first text you encounter beyond the header is the phrase, "We are one of the biggest game publishers on Nintendo Switch in the world. Forever Entertainment is leading publisher of video games, a leading publisher of video games for a Nintendo Switch console, as well as the producer and publisher of its own video games. The company also operates partners, number independent, quote, indie developers." This was before the press release came out. This has been here for a while. So I kind of read this pretty significantly differently, which is Nintendo has a fund for supporting Switch development. Well, we don't know what that fund is for. They've had similar funds in the past, though.
And what qualifies you for it.
Right. And in the past, it hasn't necessarily meant, like, we're picking what you make. Sometimes it's closer to a grant. Like, hey, here's money to help you make this thing possible. Sometimes it's more action-oriented. So, we had the Yamauchi Q Fund that ultimately just turned into a slush fund for making Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, which was not what it was originally set up for. But slush funds are never used for what they're set up for, and that was a fucking slush fund. So this could very well be that, and the lack of a mention of, hey, we're remaking Nintendo stuff. Forever would have wanted to put that in the press release.
Yeah, I think that's fair. At least if it was something relatively recognizable.
Right.
You would think there'd be value in that, but whether they would view it as a gateway to anything down the line, those sorts of things. But yeah, I would suggest that maybe what we got Panzer Dragoon 2 is still coming from them. Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
So that will be interesting to watch in terms of how well that is considered. Certainly, it's considered to be a very good original game. I guess and then the experience of doing the first one and everything, how well that turns out should be pretty interesting. And then you might have a little bit of a better grip on whether you want them to remake something like Sin and Punishment and or anything else. I couldn't really see it being anything much more high profile than something like that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff that they publish on Switch are like I don't know how many of them there are at this point. They published Fear Effect Sedna. I reviewed that. It was garbage. It was absolute ass garbage. In fact, it was unbeatable if you tried to solve the puzzle the way it was written. But they published let's say 75 Frederick the Resurrection of Musics on Switch at this point. It feels like there's a lot of those. I think there's actually just 2, but they're on sale all the time, so they're always at the top of the list. They've published a bunch of indie stuff on Switch that they didn't make, and I kind of wonder if it's more like that. Like we're giving you funding to continue to make deals to bring stuff in, to acquire the rights of games that aren't presently targeting Switch, and then get them there, like PC stuff.
Yeah.
so we can get access to Teddy Floppy Ear Mountain Adventure on Switch, which may already be there. Fuck it, I don't know. Oh, there's more than one Teddy Floppy Ear game. There's wait, no. Fuck you. You can't do this. All right. I'm mad now. So they published a game called Teddy Flop Ear Mountain Adventure, which stars a teddy bear with the floppy ear. They published another game, Teddy Flop Ear The Race, which appears to be a kart racer, which that's definitely hot garbage. But then they published another game called Teddy the Wanderer Kayaking, which stars a teddy bear, but it's not Teddy Flop Ear. It's a completely different teddy bear. How can one publisher do this? How do you let this happen?
I mean, there's more than one bear out there, James. That's what it comes down to.
Name Teddy? Like, fucking come up with a better name.
I mean, Theodore is pretty... I mean, it's not the name of the moment, but I mean, at one point, Theodore was a very popular name.
It was if you were a member of a certain community, that was a very helpful name to
The
have.
Greatest Generation? Yeah.
There you go. He wasn't. He was old. Yeah. If you're Kutar, Kutar is flop-eared no matter whether his ears are floppy or not. Just look, if you're a publisher and you've already established a canon around a teddy bear named Teddy, you can't go and introduce another teddy bear named Teddy in a separate canon. This isn't the multiverse of teddy bears. I don't need this shit from you, Forever Entertainment. Also, their website is so slow. It's so slow, I can't even make fun of them because their website's too slow to be able to get access to the material I need to make jokes. Also, Teddy Floppy Ear Kayaking. So there's three. We are, Greg, you are more right than you know. We are in Kutar territory now.
It just... the way you were describing it conjured that in my mind. So
it's like they created a mascot and pretended like it's a real mascot, and then just continued to press on.
That's how all mascots get. So that's what Sonic was, and then he became one.
They were talking about Sonic VTubers the other day, so I don't know officially. So I argue that it became something.
Yeah, mascot is maybe putting too fine a point on it
Mistake?
These days. It's more elastic than that, isn't it? It's it's a wrapper that you just put on anything apparently.
God, there are so many like icons I've seen just browsing the on sale part of Switch. Just staring me in the face on this page. Like, oh, you've seen this icon before. Usually with the text 75% off next to it. I think Frederick has been on sale literally every day of 2021. It's amazing.
There's 3 of those games.
There are 3. Oh God, there's the third one. Thanks, Thief Simulator. I've seen that one being streamed because it's jank as shit. But like, I think it's more like this is money that's being sent in to like, hey, if you bring in PC stuff, here's some money to help port it.
Yeah, presumably qualifying for something that to facilitate more games being on the platform. That sounds like the most reasonable thing, but that's not that fun to talk about.
I know it's not, but this podcast is here to inform and provide knowledge. That's all it's here for. This is a academic exercise. Also, right now, I just realized all it's trying to load is the image for Teddy, which is Teddy F Race. That's the name of the JPEG. It's just trying to load Teddy F Race.jpg, which, unfortunate naming. And it's just not happening. Oh, Forever Entertainment, your website has problems. I trust you with the ability to create an experience representative of what playing Disaster Day of Crisis is actually like. So, honestly, you couldn't put it in better hands. Are you? Actually,
I think we'd rather it in their hands than in Monolith's at this point.
I don't think Monolith can remake that game. I think they are too skilled at this point to remake accurately.
We don't want that
Disaster Day of Crisis.
We don't want that mopping up their development. Although, if that were to come to Switch, it would make Xenoblade X's sort of absence, if it's possible. To make it even more painful or funny, depending on your point of view.
I mean, I don't necessarily have to be or. It could be painful and funny.
It's just fair, yeah.
I'm just saying, I don't think Monolith is bad enough to remake Disaster Day of Crisis now. I think they would accidentally make it too good.
It's really a question of like how good they were as a developer at the time, was it? I mean, you know,
there is gross incompetence that shows up in some of the things in that game.
Well, in the game, yeah, but I mean, in terms of their general, it's like they've been making sort of Batek Kaitos and stuff. You know, I mean, it's an anomaly,
right,
in their whole like career. If they're kind of
and there's like just the fact that no one seemed to know what to do with the Wii. Like they're not the only ones who just made just bad decisions.
Yeah, whatever Project Hammer, like that didn't even get to come out. You know, that just went away.
Arguably, sometimes a game not coming out is the right outcome. Like,
well, I mean that can be the case, certainly. Although sometimes it's not. You know, like I think Star Fox 2 was a perfectly respectable game. It wasn't really quality that stopped that from coming out. But other times it may well be, more quality involved. But there's another one. Maybe pick up the bones of Project Hammer and bring it to life finally.
I've always had this sneaking suspicion that the demo of Project Hammer must have just been really bad. Because it did get that far. It did get the playable demo.
Oh, yeah, it was another one from 06, wasn't it, I think?
Yep. Because then, I mean, that thing just vanished. They have... All right, just before we move on from Forever Entertainment, I noted that you can't have two distinct teddy bear games starring a character called Teddy, and they're not be the same thing. It's even more insane. They have two distinct teddy bear games starring a character named Teddy who is not the same character, both of which involve kayaking as its primary conceit. How does that happen? All right. I can't take any more of this. We need to go to the next email. I will read it. Oh boy. Chris from Southampton, UK writes, "Hello, gentlemen of leisure. You asked, I've sent. Last week, Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead was released on Netflix. In the film, Dave Bautista takes a motley crew of quirky misfits into the zombie-plagued Las Vegas Strip for one last score of $50 million. In the film, Bautista recruits the following tired archetypes to his crew: the love interest, the muscle, the safecracker, the crazy one, the company man who turns on the team, the helicopter pilot, and the scout who can get the team in and out of Vegas. My mission, should you choose to accept it, compile a crack team of Nintendo characters or non-Tendo characters to sneak into Las Vegas for one last score. Who would you take, and who will think they're out until you pull them back in? Choose wisely, as they'll be taking on a zombie horde. Because, as they say, where there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth." My answer would be, I will take Slippy as the helicopter pilot, Wario as the safecracker, Birdo as the love interest, and of course, Ivan from Devil's Third as my muscle. That's right, John. Get that bubble bath ready. Tub Time is going to be $50 million richer.
I like it. I agree with Wario. Muscle would probably be Captain Falcon for me.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Who canonically only exists inside a car.
Exactly.
Right. That's okay. He had like an anime and
he had a cutscene in he had a couple cutscenes in F-Zero GX.
Oh yeah.
All right. What else you got?
He can punch the universe, can't he? So
no,
the muscle is right.
What's your company man who's going to betray them?
Oh,
John?
see this because I haven't seen this. I don't know how many people have, but the one thing I have sort of seen said is that it is very, even though it's a zombie movie, it's patterned mostly on aliens, or at least partly on aliens. And I mean, some of these company man, the helicopter pilot, the muscle, like we've got
Paul Reiser, right?
Yeah, Paul Reiser character, Vasquez would be the muscle, like the helicopter pilot is literally to the dropship pilot. I think I'm going to go with Fox McCloud's dad, James McCloud, for the helicopter, just because he's got the shades like those kind of aviator style that they gave to the dropship pilot in Alien. So that's one down.
See, I think he could be the company man too, though, because I mean, the company man wouldn't want to be there for the damage, fly in, fly out. I've got the plan right here. Oh, all right, throw the money on board, then I'll get the rest of y'all up. Oh, I'm going to fly away. Bye. Just saying, lots of opportunity to screw the rest. Because $50 million is a lot of money, but when you start having to split it 10 ways, it's not the same, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's why you need someone to turn on the others.
Right. $50 million is fuck you money. $5 million is I'm going to retire and live a super comfortable life. And if I'm going to go for one last score, I want to get to a spot in my life where I'm not just rich. I am like, buy up the houses around me for no particular reason just because I don't want to have neighbors rich. Like, I want to cross into the territory of full, like, eccentric rich guy rich. Like, buy a theme park and not let anyone come rich. Like, that's where I want to be. I don't want to be in I can buy a nice house and have a cleaning staff that comes by once every other week and never have to work again rich. That's boring rich. I want eccentric rich. So I think we got to try to find the right character for eccentric rich company man. And to me, that's if you combine that with the helicopter pilot, you do really well because it gives them the opportunity to escape, and that's where Tingle comes in. What do we got? We know he's got the maps, which is usually what the company man provides. I've got the info.
Well, yeah, see, he could be the scout as well. That's the thing. This is just like Tingle is all the characters. Like,
I think Tingle is everything.
Yeah, Tingle has the intel. We already know that he'll hire people to do work for him, and then also maybe not reward them the way he says he will. We know he's got a money obsession and a treasure obsession, and we know he can fly.
And if you had a GBA plugged into the Wind Waker, he could drop bombs. So
yeah, air support also, and yeah, he could blow the door off the safe. He's got a lot of these covered, actually. I get the muscle is the biggest problem. He really pretty much go crazy. He's definitely not all there. So, I mean,
he does briefly engage in slave labor. It doesn't necessarily have to be his muscle.
No, he would have to hire out for that. It couldn't just be another part of his psyche or skill set. But the love interest as well, because the second DS Tingle game that did not leave Japan was Tingle's Balloon Trip of Love or something, like the way the title was translated. So, you know, he could qualify, or someone from that game could qualify.
I think he has a love interest
in that game. Pinkle or something, or is that?
Yeah, but I think it's also like one directional. It's more of an infatuation than a love interest. But I'm just saying, Tingle has versatility as a character.
Oh, he does. Yeah, evidently. I think we've established that.
But I mean, normally you want in these kinds of movies
it's just it all goes really well. He's gonna get away with the 50 million, and then the balloon gets popped by a kid or a child zombie with a slingshot, and it all goes horribly. He just gets ripped to bits in seconds.
Comedic justice has to come out.
But wearing his intestines as a necklace like 30 seconds later.
What's usually though the betrayer in these movies is like immediately obvious.
Oh yeah, like Put Riser is really. I mean, it's not like a shock, is it?
I don't know. I know some people won't want to hear it, but Luigi is obviously the person who's going to betray the whole team.
The company man.
Yeah. Because he's always been, you know, the kind of the scaredy one, and he seems to be, I don't know, easily influenceable. Like, and it feels like if he can find safety by screwing over the others, he will.
I could see him. What was the? Oh, I can't believe I'm going to fucking mention it. I mean, he could be your Dennis Nedry type ultimately.
Jurassic Park with the shaven foam can full of baby dinosaur DNA.
Yeah, like first time he just seems like he's kind of an annoying jackass, but relatively harmless. But then you realize, like, oh no, he's actually super in for his own.
Right. So like he's meant to go vacuum up all the money in the safe, but like they have him, like they think they have him on the radio, and like, come on, Luigi, it's your turn, and like he's nowhere to be found. He's already, made
grabbed one of Tingle's balloons, and is trying to float his way out.
Yep.
in terms of see, I think in terms of muscle, the muscle character needs to be dangerous. Like everyone needs to acknowledge the muscle character is dangerous. So in your a lot of these movies, it's somebody who's out of prison. It's a Vin Diesel role with the camera shot like he's a hobbit, so they make him look taller than he is.
But sometimes, yeah, like there's the Vin Diesel type, but a lot of movies actually will have like kind of like the lethal lady type, like trained in kung fu or whatever.
Yeah. Well, like I said, in Aliens, the muscle is Vasquez, like it's,
right,
one of the women characters.
Yeah. Yep. So personally, I see Zelda as this, when she turns into what's her face? Like the Sheik, right?
Yeah,
I think that's more like the gymnast archetype that doesn't come up, but you see it in like the Ocean's movies and stuff.
Oh, I don't know. Sheik will, if the opportunity had arisen, like would have tried to strangle someone with their thighs. Like bicycle kicks would have happened.
God damn it. I mean,
I'm sorry.
You should be. You absolutely should be. What have you done?
I don't know. Like, very easy to think that, I don't know what pronoun to use with Sheik, but,
Sheik?
Like, do they have like some sort of like, not harpoon, but kind of a hook shot? They do, right?
No, they ninja flash out of the scene all the time.
Huh. Okay. Well, what happened? Okay. Well, in the Smash Brothers games, there's some sort of
got that line that kind of gets cast out, like that fishing type move or whatever.
Right. I don't know.
I've not used a lot of Sheik for a long time.
Yeah, I can see that, ripping into like a zombie's neck pretty easily, and heads come off.
I think it's Zelda-wise, a company man possibility from Zelda has got to be Ingo or whatever from the ranch.
Oh, of course,
because he sells out to Ganondorf.
You mean Luigi?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is it, isn't it? I mean, I think it reinforces what Guillaume's saying that maybe Luigi is a good. But if you didn't want to soil Luigi's reputation and are like, no, this is going to upset too many people, go for Luigi's non-union equivalent, his Zelda equivalent, which is Ingo.
That's non-union.
Ingo is non-union equivalent in many ways.
He's not going in for that at all. But he sells out when Ganondorf takes over, and he's giving him tributes with the horses and stuff. Like, he's totally the sellout character.
See, for me, the company man would have to be Tom Nook.
But see, I don't see Tom Nook putting himself in danger.
Is he the head of the company? That's the problem. We need somebody who's working for Nook. Like, Nook is like
maybe Timmy. Was it Timmy and Tommy Nook?
His nephews or whatever they are.
Yeah. He would absolutely put his nephews in danger. So I want to touch on the muscle, though, because a lot of times the muscle is a military person, former military, not usually current military. They're usually huge.